Imagine you're standing in line at the grocery store. You've got the same cart of food you buy every single week. Eggs, milk, maybe a little treat for the weekend. You get to the register, the cashier rings it up, and the number on the screen is $20 higher than it was last month. You freeze. You pay it, obviously, because you have to eat, but you walk out to the parking lot with this sinking feeling in your stomach. You feel like you've been robbed, but no one actually stuck a gun in your face. That feeling, that is the sound of your wealth evaporating. And the worst part is, most people think the solution to this problem is just to save more money. They think if they just stop buying lattes, they'll be fine. But here's the thing. While you're busy pinching pennies, there is a silent tax that is legally draining 40% of your future net worth right out of your pockets, and you probably signed the paperwork to let it happen. My name is Nash, and I spend way too much time thinking about the invisible forces that keep regular people broke. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right, saving money, avoiding debt, working hard, but you still can't seem to get ahead, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because today we are going to audit your life and stop the leak. Now look, when I say silent tax, you're probably thinking about the IRS. You're thinking about federal tax, state tax, sales tax, and sure, those are painful, but at least you see them on your pay stub. You know they exist. The tax I'm talking about is invisible. It doesn't show up on a receipt, it doesn't have a due date, and because of that, it's infinitely more dangerous. This silent tax is actually a combination of two things: cash drag and investment fees, and when you combine them, the math is honestly brutal. Let's start with cash drag. Here is what most people don't realize about safety. We are biologically wired to hoard resources. Ancestrally, if you had a pile of food, you survived the winter. If you didn't, you died. So fast forward to today, and your brain tells you that a pile of cash in a checking account equals survival. It feels safe. You log into your bank app, you see the number, it doesn't go down. It feels like a warm blanket. But here is where it gets interesting. That safety is an illusion. Let's run the numbers. Let's say you have $50,000 sitting in a standard savings account at a big bank. You know the ones, the banks with the big buildings downtown. They're paying you maybe 0.01% interest, effectively zero. Meanwhile, inflation is hovering around 3 to 4%. Now you might be thinking, Nash, losing 3% isn't that bad. I can live with that for peace of mind. But that's not the math. That's the wrong math. You aren't just losing the 3% to inflation, you are losing the difference between what that money is doing sitting there and what it could be doing if it was working for you. If the S&P 500 averages a 10% return and you are earning 0%, your silent tax isn't 3%, it's roughly 10% per year. You are paying a 10% tax for the privilege of feeling safe. Let's look at this over 20 years. If you leave that $50,000 in cash, in 20 years with 3% inflation, it will have the purchasing power of about $27,000. You literally cut your wealth in half by doing nothing. But if you had invested that $50,000 and it grew at 8%, being conservative, in 20 years you'd have roughly $233,000. The difference between $27,000 in value and $233,000 in value is the price of your fear. That is a massive six-figure tax bill that you paid voluntarily because you were scared of the stock market crashing. And this brings me to the psychology of it. Why do we do this? Why do we choose guaranteed poverty over probable wealth? It's called loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing $1,000 feels twice as bad as the joy of gaining $1,000. If the stock market drops 10%, you feel like the world is ending. If it goes up 10%, you feel, meh, that's nice. So to avoid that pain, you stay in cash. You tell yourself, I'll invest when the market crashes. I'm waiting for the right time. Here's the thing. You aren't Warren Buffett. You aren't going to time the bottom. While you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect moment, the silent tax is eating you alive every single day. The market doesn't care about your feelings. It moves up and to the right over the long term, And if you aren't on the train, you're getting left at the station. But wait, it gets worse. Let's say you are investing. You're doing the right thing. You put your money in a mutual fund or you went to a financial advisor because your parents told you to. You think you're smart. You think you've dodged the tax. This is where the second part of the silent tax comes in, and this one is arguably more insidious because it's hidden in the fine print. I'm talking about fees. Now, 1 or 2% doesn't sound like a lot, right? If I asked you for 2% of your sandwich, you'd barely notice a bite missing. But compound interest works both ways. It works for your money, but it also works for the fees you pay. Let's say you invest $10,000 a year for 30 years. Scenario A, you invest in a low-cost index fund with a fee of 0.04%. Scenario B, you invest in an actively managed mutual fund with a fee of 1.5%. 1.5% sounds small, but over 30 years, assuming an 8% return, in scenario A with the low fees, you end up with about $1.2 million. In scenario B with the high fees, you end up with about $900,000. That 1.5% fee didn't cost you 1.5% of your money, it cost you $300,000. That is 25 to 30% of your total potential wealth gone. Poof, vanished into the pockets of a fund manager who probably underperformed the market anyway. When you combine the cash drag of keeping too much money in the bank with the high fees of bad investment products, you are easily looking at a 40 to 50% reduction in your lifetime wealth. That is the silent tax. It's not the government taking it to build roads, it's financial ignorance taking it to build nothing. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, Nash, this is depressing. I'm terrified of inflation, I'm terrified of fees, and I'm terrified of the market. What do I actually do? Stop panicking. The solution is actually boringly simple, but simple is hard because it requires discipline. Step 1. Audit your cash. You need an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses. That's it. Anything beyond that is not a safety net, it's a fire pit where you are burning value. If you have $50,000 sitting in checking and your expenses are $3,000 a month, take $30,000 of that and move it. Step 2, check your expense ratios. Log into your 401k or your IRA right now. Look at the funds you're invested in. If the expense ratio is above 0.5%, you are getting ripped off. You want to look for broad market index funds, total stock market, S&P 500. These usually have fees closer to 0.03%. That switch alone could save you the price of a Ferrari by the time you retire. Step 3, automate the fear away. The reason you hoard cash is because you're emotional. You're human. You see a scary headline and you stop investing. The only way to beat the silent tax is to remove yourself from the equation. Set up an automatic transfer. The day you get paid, the money moves to investments. You don't see it, you don't touch it, you can't panic sell what you don't look at. Listen, the financial industry relies on you being either too scared to invest or too confused to notice the fees. That is their business model. But you are the CFO of your own life. You have to stop looking at the sticker price of eggs and start looking at the sticker price of your bad habits. Don't let the silent tax eat your future. If you found value in this, if you felt that little light bulb go off, hit the like button so this video spreads to more people who need to hear it. And if you want to know exactly where to put that money once you move it out of savings, check out this video right here where I break down the exact order of operations for investing. I'll see you over there.